Hi guys, welcome back to Pembroke's Own and the first video I'll be doing in the Writing Tings series. These videos are to help any aspiring authors out there and also to give everyone a bit of an insight into what the writing process actually looks like. Starting off the playlist is advice for first time writers. This could be for any amateur authors out there looking to finish their manuscript. This could be for someone who wants to take up writing purely as a hobby, or for any of the fuckwits currently working at Disney Star Wars. Now, it should be noted that any of my advice is purely subjective and based around my own experiences writing my first two books, my current project, and for all the other projects that I have outlined. Take my advice as you will, but you should also know that this is just for the writing part. We're not going to be going into anything regarding publishing just yet. And because my generosity goes further than my own fucking hairline does, I'm going to throw in a couple of extra tips at the end, which specifically helped me with writing my first book. But with all this said and done, I hope you've got pen and paper ready, because I'm not quite sure yet how to put numbers or notes on the screen yet. Let's get straight into point one. So you have an idea in your head, maybe an epic plot, a tense scene, a vibrant character. You are ready to put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. You'll have a lot of ideas going around in your head on the first draft, and as I can tell you, the creative part of your brain will actually activate more when you're not in front of the laptop or paper. You could be at work, you could be food shopping, or just chasing a womble around your garden, but your brain will offer you up random ideas at the most inconvenient of times, whether it's related to your current project or not. Take note of the random idea straight away. If you've got pen and paper near you, brilliant. If you haven't, you can always use the Notes app on your phone, or send that idea to a friend via message, so you can always come back to it later. This of course will create a bit of confusion, because they normally reply along the lines of, "What the fuck are you babbling on about, you borderline alcoholic?" Taking notes is actually important because it helps you exercise whatever your brain is subconsciously trying to tell you about your story. Whether it's an outstanding idea that elevates your story to the next level, or a shit one that completely derails it, at least you will have the idea in front of you and you can work with it then, and you don't actually have to waste time trying to remember it. Once you have all of your notes and ideas in front of you, you can then begin to plan and structure the very spine of your story, seeing exactly what works and what doesn't, whether it's a character reference, a character arc, a plot, a twist. If you've got it all in front of you, you can then begin to map out your manuscript. Trust me, I can attest to this. I have notes going further back than my hatred for flat earthers, but I can honestly say that taking notes, getting the bad ideas out of your head, honestly helps with the plot and structure of your novel so much, and you will become such a better writer for it. Which brings us along neatly to point two, being a plotter or a panster. Panzer? Panzer? I'm not even sure I can say that word. From the beginning, you should know whether you want to freestyle your story in the form of a panster, or have every detail pre-mapped out in the form of a plotter. I consider myself somewhere in the middle, because both sides have their pros and cons. Being a Panzer Shrek? I've been playing way too much Call of Duty. Being a panster gives you the benefit of creative freedom, moving from scene to scene or dialogue to dialogue without the constraints of a time frame. This creates very natural ways to move through your story with endless possibilities. But this also leads to the downside of being a panster. Going through your story without a plot can lead to massive plot holes, contrived backstories, logic, and even scenes that take way too long before moving on to the next point. Keeping your reader guessing should only work if you know how the story is actually going to end. I can attest this with The Taste Beneath, as I pretty much pantsed the first 13 chapters, and I didn't know what to write after that because I didn't have an ending mapped out. Once I had the ending and actually started structuring what was going to happen and when, the first 13 chapters actually narrowed down and the rest of the story flowed so much more easily. You can end up writing yourself into a corner, and if you haven't pre-plotted anything to help your character out of this situation, please do not resort to what some writers out there are doing, which is just pulling the most random bullshit out of their arse to help their character get out of that situation. If you have written yourself into a corner, then either go back and make sure your character doesn't end up in that situation, or pre-put something in chapters before, some kind of plot device that will help your character get out of this situation and move on to the next part of your story. Relying on random stuff to help your character get out of a situation is cheap and lazy, and it isn't a satisfying conclusion for your reader or a victory for your character. Which brings us along to the pander's evil twin sister, plotting, which is considered by most to be the more professional way of writing a book. Plotting, or outlining as it's more commonly known as, is great because you know exactly what's going to be happening throughout your book, chapter by chapter, dropping small little hints and Easter eggs throughout, and you know exactly the path that your character and the world they live in is going to take. There's just one small problem with all of this: your characters and the world they live in, because they have a mind of their own, and what you put onto them when you're plotting is from your writer brain, and it won't necessarily match their personality. When it comes to writing your plotted story, no matter how detailed you've made it, once you jump out of your writer's skin and into your character's body, you'll realise that some of the stuff that you have plotted out for them is something that your character would never actually do, and it goes against their nature, which is why in modern writing we've seen it quite a lot. People sticking to structures and not obeying the character laws, which is why we end up with shit like Game of Thrones Season 8 and The Last Jedi. Your characters have their own personality, and so does the world they live in, and this won't always line up with your plotting logic. This is why I consider myself to be both a plotter and a pancreas, purely because I like to know the destination, I like to know the twists, I like to know the main plot points, but I like to let my characters decide how they get there. This of course can be, as you can imagine, tricky and confusing. Unless of course, point one, you take notes. So by now you know how you want to write your story, which will lead us into points 3 and 4, which you are going to experience once you start writing. So points 3 and 4, writer's block and rewriting. And I've included these together because they actually help cancel each other out, and I hope that this could help any first time writers help defeat that writer's block. I've experienced personally writer's block multiple times, and I'm hoping that this advice I can give will help encourage new writers to get past that, whether it's the beginning of a new chapter or you don't know how to venture on with the plot that you've started. And the best advice I can give you for writer's block is actually point 3, rewrites. Rewrites will actually help you smash that writer's block as you become so much more familiar with your story. Even if your rewrites are just doing the punctuation, spelling, grammar, all of that kind of proofreading stuff, you will start to absorb your story more, and the answer for whether you've written your character into a corner or you don't know how to start a new chapter, you will start to familiarise yourself with your story through these rewrites, and then the answer will come to you. Especially if you're taking notes, you might spot things here, you might spot things there. You can add something in which will then help your character get on to the next part of your story. I cannot recommend rewriting enough. If the rewrites aren't helping you with your writer's block, then do not feel too bad. This can also be referred to as what is called imposter syndrome. You just have to work through it. And this actually leads me on to point 5, which is taking breaks. Taking breaks is essential for any writer. It doesn't just prevent you from getting creative burnout, but it's also better for your mental health. You know, essentially go outside to touch grass. You cannot spend too long in front of your laptop or pen to paper without doing some serious damage to yourself. So go out, see the world, go get a pint, maybe a hooker, whatever you're into. It's also these time away from your story which actually might benefit your manuscript. As ideas start coming through and you're taking notes or sending them to your friend via message, you will start to get more and more ideas. The more you contain yourself to just sitting at the laptop and not giving yourself time away, you will become pretty much numb to the creative process. I personally like to write 3 or 4 chapters at a time and then take maybe about a week off, and within that week I'm getting flooded with ideas or I'm gagging to get back to it. It actually benefits my writing so much having a week away because I can't wait to get back to it. Writing should be fun. It's not always fun, but it should be fun. And I can't recommend just taking the time off away just to give yourself and just remind yourself you are human, because it also gives you that energy to get back and write yourself a banging story. So there you have it, folks. These are the basic tips I can give any first time writer out there. Bear in mind this is all preference and all subjective, and it's going to be fun for you to find out your own creative writing style as you go along your journey. But I did say I was going to give away 2 extra tips, and I hope that you take these on board as well, because these can massively help you and give you a bit of ease when it comes to writing your first manuscript. Beta readers, these are essential for any writer out there. Even if you're thinking of taking the traditional publishing route or the self-publishing route, it's good to have that extra set of eyes on your work before you send it off to an editor. I personally like to have a mix of people when it comes to my beta readers. Some of them are avid readers and some of them are authors. This is a good different set of eyes to get on your work before you send it out. Avid book readers love book reading, so from their perspective they'll be able to take on board away from the author's side and actually give you a reader's experience before you even try to send your work out. This is essential because it takes away your own personality and your own perspective and forces it to be in the reader's eyes. And authors are great beta readers as well, purely because they know the skills, the techniques, what works and what doesn't, and they can point out the flaws, maybe plot holes or character details that you may have missed. Even though you may have given your book many rewrites, you could have missed something, and author beta readers will help point that out. The second point is purely subjective. This is something I just personally do, and I think I'm the only author I know that actually does this. But I like to write my book in thirds, pretty much Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And what I will do is I will rewrite and rewrite and rewrite that first part, and then I will send it out to beta readers. What this does for me is essentially I get to know this part of the book inside and out, chapter by chapter by chapter, and it almost has its own consistency. And then when I pass it on to beta readers, they obviously give the feedback, and I can pretty much be happy that that part of the book is solidified the way it is. This also helps on to move into Act 2, because I pretty much know the inside of that book, or that part of the book, as I should say, inside out. It makes writing part 2 of the book so much easier. I follow this process pretty much the whole way through the book, when it goes Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, knowing each part inside out. And then when I finish the whole manuscript and send the final part out to beta readers, I then go through the whole manuscript just to make sure that something in chapter 2 lines up with what I've done in chapter 17. Even though I'm pretty confident because I know those 2 parts inside out, it's good just to do a full rewrite as well. So that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. If there aren't any first time writers out there, let me know how you got on, or if you think these tips could be valuable to you. If you're new here, make sure you smash that subscribe button. If you like this video, leave a cheeky like, and I'll be trying to get weekly videos out to you guys as much as possible. It's just proving pretty tricky, because even these short videos right now are taking up a lot of my time. I've got to try and learn to balance it in between my books as well. I might even do some videos of the insides of what it's like to record a YouTube video for any authors out there to see this side of the process. But I will be back soon with the next video in the Beyond Fiction series that I've been doing, and I've got an absolute cracker lined up for you guys with that one. But as always, much love, take care, peace.